We've got so much to discuss in such a short period of time. But first of all, I wanted to talk about being a political figure, an elected official, and the harassment that I've seen. I follow you on Twitter, the harassment that I've seen you go through, other female elected officials. What's this journey been like for you over, I mean, I was going to say 4 months, but it went beyond, previous to that, even during the campaign.
Yeah, well, the first thing that I'll say is that people in the community are wonderful. So I've experienced zero harassment in Ottawa from community members who are generally very generous and very thankful that I took the opportunity to step up to be in public life, but I will say that online is a trash fire for women in politics. The first real window I got into this was in my previous job where I monitored social media for other leaders, really seeing what happened to Catherine McKenna, the former environment minister and MP for Ottawa Centre. She dealt with every time she posted something, it was just an absolute garbage pile-on of misogyny and harassment. And then that ended up translating into real life harassment, people shouting things at her in the neighborhood. And that was very upsetting to see. So when I decided to run for office, I went into things with my eyes open. And I also really tried to focus on the community. I knocked on doors. I spoke to 15,000 people. I got involved in the community. And that's been really wonderful. I try not to look at my mentions, but I also use third-party blocking software called Block Party, which allows me to screen mentions, so I'm not constantly looking at hatred. But I have to say, in a lot of ways, I have it easier than some. I mean, just this week, Faye Johnstone, who's a wonderful trans activist in Ottawa, was featured in an ad for Hershey's chocolate bars and has been absolutely dogpiled with just the most horrendous hatred. And when I mentioned it, when I say the harassment is coming in fast and furious, it's like at the rate of 1 per second. Like, I just can't keep up with it. And so there is definitely a weaponized hatred, and there are some really dark places in the web that are encouraging folks to just pile on. We see it happen to former Global journalist Rachel Gilmore, especially since she was let go from that job. And so I think all of this cumulatively is trying to push women and gender diverse people out of public life. I think it's really important for us to say no and for us to take up that space. And whenever possible, to get off the internet. There was a great La Tigre song in the 90s that said, "Get off the internet, I'll see you in the streets." Like, really spend time in our communities talking to people. But I have to say that background noise can be very distracting and very upsetting. I don't want to ever excuse it because it's not acceptable.
Agreed. And great advice. I mean, stepping away from social media, I think we all need to do it more often and look at more of what's happening within our city and our circles, which brings me to, a topic you wanted to discuss today, and that's how to build a better city for women. What do you think we could do differently?
So, it's very interesting. A story that I often tell is how in Stockholm and other major Swedish cities, they did a gender equity analysis of city services. And one of the ones where they made changes was snow clearing, which is very timely for Ottawa, where they traced who used certain routes. So who was using roads, who was riding their bike, and who was walking on sidewalks. And they discovered that women were taking their children to school. They were using those walking and cycling routes. So that changed the priority with which they plowed snow in the neighborhood, and that was based on a gender analysis. Another analogy that I think of is when my daughter was a baby 10 years ago, pushing a stroller gives you a window into accessibility in a city that you may never have if you don't use a mobility device. Suddenly you notice every pothole, every step that you have to get over, and that's another example of how an equity lens becomes immediately visible to you. Another issue that I hear a lot about is safety on buses and in our streets. So I know that many years ago, programs started in a lot of Canadian cities where women could request to get off the bus early on a stop that was closer to their walk home at night, that allowed them to have a greater sense of safety taking public transit. And what I always like to say is that when we use an equity lens, we make a city better for everyone. So if we use a gender equity lens and we look at snow clearing, we're also making it more pedestrian friendly. If we use an accessibility lens, we're ensuring that there are no barriers to businesses and essential services in our city. So I really believe that if we mainstream that equity approach into all of the ways that we deliver services, it's going to make it better for everyone.
I've heard the complaint about sidewalks, even to the point where some people are saying, not just the street, but the bike lanes in my neighborhood are getting plowed before the sidewalk. And, the ratio of people walking compared to biking, I've got no problem. I'm a cyclist myself, so I have no issue with it. But it's interesting that you bring up that point and that, that gender issue with that women are taking their kids to school, predominantly they're the ones that are responsible for those sort of things.
Yeah.
And it gives you, as you said, sort of a lens into what it's like, with people that have mobility issues, just pushing a stroller. I think it's just things that people don't necessarily think about.
And sometimes you don't notice until suddenly you're injured and you need to use a mobility device, or suddenly you have a child, you need to use a stroller. There's a lot of frail seniors in my neighborhood. Women tend to live longer than men. Women who are no longer able to drive are more likely to walk. So I really think that if we can apply that lens to our city services, it makes our city more efficient, it makes it more equitable, and it has a spillover effect of also being more accessible to seniors, to people with disabilities.
I know you're passionate about the homelessness crisis in our city, affordable housing, specifically about homelessness. Let's talk a little bit about that and how that specifically affects women in our community.
Sure. Well, the number one source of homelessness among women in Canada is intimate partner violence.
Yeah.
So that's one issue, which is that women fleeing violence need a place to go. So on International Women's Day, that's always top of mind for me. And here's the reality, the housing crisis right now, we have 12,000 people waiting for subsidized homes in our city. We do not have enough affordable homes. So increasingly, it means that women might stay in a dangerous situation because they literally don't have other places to go. Yeah. My daughter's school had a situation in the beginning of the year where there was a group of children who couldn't start school for the first couple weeks because they were living with their parents in hotel shelters and they couldn't figure out how to get the school bus to get them to school. Right. And so it has a trickle-down effect into family poverty and into childhood development. At the end of the day, housing is the first and most important stability that all of us need to have in our lives. And the neighborhood that I represent has the highest rate of poverty, and that includes a lot of women. And so not only do we need affordable housing, we need affordable housing that meets women's needs and families' needs in our community.
Ariel, I have about 60 seconds left. Just quickly, advice for women that want to throw their hat into the political ring. What advice would you give them?
I would say do it. I think that if you ever have that voice in the back of your head saying that you're not qualified enough, I like to think that, channel the false confidence.
I don't know if it's false.
Channel the confidence of someone vastly unqualified that you have seen run for office before. I think
there are examples. You're not wrong.
But at the end of the day, I really believe we all need to believe in ourselves, and I think that there are studies out there that say women are only likely to apply for a job if they have 90% of the qualifications, but men are likely to apply if they have 60 or 70%. I think sometimes you need to just take a breath and take a leap. But I also really recommend that people really get involved in community because you care about community.
Yeah, and that's how you got involved,
absolutely.
right, to begin with. Ariel, real pleasure having you on the show. Thanks so much.
Thank
and happy
you so
International
much.
Women's Day
You
to
too.
you. We'll be right back after this.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Going back in, okay?
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3. I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
Your City News forecast for today could be a windfall of cash. With our weather guarantee, if we're off by 3 degrees, you could win. Enter at ottawa.citynews.ca. And if you hear your name on Wake Up with Rob Snow at 7:21 a.m., call in to claim your cash.
Welcome back to Daytime Ottawa, this special edition as we celebrate International Women's Day, and Care Canada has been supporting women and telling us how they have been impacted so disproportionately on so many things like climate change and COVID and conflicts around the world. And here to talk more about it and some of the wonderful work that they do, I'm joined by Emily Wiseman. She's the Senior Gender Equality Advisor over at Care Canada. Emily, welcome. Really appreciate you spending some time. I know everybody at home probably recognizes Care Canada, but for those not familiar with the great work that you do, let's start off with that, Emily.
Sure, and thank you so much for having me with you today. So CARE is a leading international humanitarian and development organization. We work around the world to fight poverty and injustice and to help create a more equal and gender-just world. We place a special focus on working alongside women and girls, as you mentioned, because we know that we cannot overcome poverty until all people have equal rights and opportunities. And so we work in about 100 countries, and we reach about 90 million people through about 1,300 projects.
Wow. You mentioned, the impact that, women and girls face when it comes to those things, as I mentioned off the top. Maybe you could just expand on that when it comes to, conflict and COVID and climate change. How are they impacted differently from others in the world?
Yeah, no, that's a great example. And so one of the best ways that I can illustrate the different impact is we saw, for example, during COVID-19, what we saw called a shadow pandemic. And that was where we saw increases in gender-based violence, declines in mental health, job losses that disproportionately impacted women, increasing hunger and food security that resulted in a variety of negative consequences. And all of these different combinations really impacted to disproportionately impact women and girls, to a tune of where the World Economic Forum estimates that we lost about 32 years of progress on gender equality gains in the first 2.5 years of the pandemic. So we went from it taking about 100 years to close the gender gap around things like education, health, and economic empowerment to having it take 132 years. And when we look at economic empowerment specifically, the gap is now 151 years. So really tremendous impacts around gender equality. And this is why this International Women's Day CARE is really especially focused on women's economic empowerment and justice.
Well, and I guess a big reason for that, Emily, is there's not enough women at those decision-making tables around the world. I know that's a big focus you have at CARE. Tell us what the impact can be having more women involved in decision-making around the world.
Absolutely. And we've seen that whether it's a climate negotiation, a peace process, or whether it's just leadership within a hospital or a business, we're seeing a lack of women across a number of spaces and a lack of women's voices and the voices of other marginalized groups in decision-making spaces. And what that results in is it means that we end up with policies and practices that don't respond to the needs of women and other marginalized groups, and in some cases can even harm those groups because their voices and their needs have just not been identified. And so when it comes to the work that CARE does, we really work to support individual women to access the knowledge and skills and capacities that they need to take on leadership roles within their communities. But we also work with their families, the men and boys in their lives, the business leaders, religious leaders in their communities as well, to support them on that journey in support of women's leadership. And we also look at some of the structures like sexual harassment, which your previous guest touched on, that can really limit the ability of women to thrive and succeed in their chosen area of work. And we know that when we combine all of these factors together, we can see some really remarkable successes. One of the things that we saw at CARE during the pandemic was we have something called a Village and Savings and Loan Association. And this is like a community group where women come together and they're able to pool their economic resources. They're able to make decisions together about how to spend resources that they have. They can access more loans and insurance and financial literacy. So it's a great space for them to come together. But what we found in the pandemic was that these groups, the women who participated, they were less likely to be negatively impacted economically. So their livelihoods were better during COVID. They had improved food security, and they had improved access to health care than women who didn't participate in these groups. And these groups ultimately, in a number of places, were looked to by their communities as decision makers, as leaders that could be followed. And they were able to distribute really crucial and important health information around the pandemic, and they were able to support their community in a variety of ways. And so that's just one example of how when you support women to do the things that they know their community needs, and when you put them in a position where they can make those decisions, really fantastic things happen, and we see really strong outcomes.
Yeah, and Emily, another focus you mentioned off the top was education. I'd like to touch on that again because, you know, women and girls and the lack of education and opportunity for education is still a huge issue around the world. How many women and girls are impacted by that, and you know, how has Care Canada helped?
Yeah, absolutely. A huge number of women and girls are being impacted by the loss of education as a result of the pandemic or a variety of other factors. And this is a really troubling area because we know that education is an area where it provides young women and girls with opportunities to gain skills and confidence, to learn new methods for navigating the world and to make choices in their lives. And we know that for every year a girl stays in school, it increases her long-term income earning potential by about 20%. And we also know that young girls who are able to stay in school and complete a primary education, they're 2/3 less likely to have negative maternal mortality deaths. So they're much more likely to survive childbirth, they're much more likely to thrive, and their own children are much more likely to succeed. All in all, education is really that cornerstone that we know sets young women and girls up for success to make choices for their own lives and to build a better future for themselves and their families.
Emily, I mean, I have so many other questions. I just want to say thanks so much on behalf of us here at Rogers TV on all the great work that you and your team do at Care Canada. Really appreciate your time here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. And I should mention as well, you know, when it comes to girl and women's education, you know, there's this alleged situation happening in Iran right now. There's a rally to condemn this mass poisoning of what they think is about 1,000 schoolgirls in Iran. So I encourage you to look more into that. We'll be right back after this.
It's closing time, and you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive, and the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend. Or maybe your roommate? What about your best friend? You could just dial 1-888-TAXI-GUY or use the Taxi Guy app. The call and the app are free, and they both connect you to a local cab company to bring you home safely. Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive, drive sober.
I'm a singer-songwriter from Six Nations, and I've been writing songs about my experience, and with that being said, it's helped me hold hope in my heart in following my dreams and being resilient to everyday Indigenous battles. Competition between spirit, earth, and wind, let me tell you now. This song in particular, The Shiner, is a special song that I wrote for my grandfather. He was a snow snake maker, and that is a Haudenosaunee winter sport. It's my job to educate and to share, and the music allows me to do that. He'll be shining snow snakes and mudcats to the end of his days.
This is Meg from Fit Over 50. On our next episode, we're going to be doing a full body workout using resistance bands. You can find bands at any local sporting goods store. So go get yours and hope to see you then.
Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by storytellers for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
Why should women be bragging more about their successes? Well, I don't necessarily have that answer. And I think perhaps for many of you at home, you think to yourself, well, that's probably obvious, you know, bragging about your success. It's not that obvious. And my next guest is going to share some advice on that very topic. Steph Kelly joins me. She is a play and empowerment coach over at Copper Thread Coaching. Welcome, Steph. Great to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk about your role because I just love, first of all, the title, you know, a play and empowerment coach. And I think the most intriguing part of that role is when people hear the word play. Where does play come into what you do at Copper Thread?
Really, it's about how you approach things. So for us, everything we do goes through a lens of curiosity and play and lightness, and you still get to the same place in the end, but It feels like less heavy lifting using those sort of playful, creative tools. And especially in group work, we came and talked about the Smash Room and the different workshops we do where you get to do something physical and play a little bit, but you're also getting to pull the threads and learn what's at the bottom, and it's a good combo.
Yeah,
it's a fun
absolutely.
job.
Yeah, for sure. And you want to talk about bragging a little bit today and how women don't do enough of it, bragging about their successes, no matter how big or small. Why, first of all, do you think it is that women don't brag about themselves enough?
It's a tricky one. I think that when we think of someone who brags, we typically think of someone who's a little bit maybe self-focused at the detriment of their relationships or is arrogant. But bragging really is an essential skill for people. It impacts your personal life, your professional life. There's a study out of the Harvard Business School that talks about when somebody gives you a direct invitation to brag. They ask you a question like, oh, how did you land this role? And you don't take the bait and you kind of skirt around it.
Right.
They're actually likely to perceive you as not trustworthy and less reliable.
Interesting.
In your personal life, the University of Chicago talks about if you don't tell your people about your wins, your intimate relationships, it can end up with big problems because they feel left out and they want to celebrate with you and jump up and down. And that can lead to resentment and problems in your relationship. So learning to brag comfortably and effectively in a way that feels good to you is a really essential skill.
Well, let's talk about that skill then. So how do you go about bragging? What are some of those tools you can share with our viewers?
Well, let me teach you how to brag, Derick.
If you wouldn't mind, I would love that.
We work a lot with women, so it comes up in one-on-one sessions a lot. You know, these are people who are really deeply good at lifting other people up and celebrating the wins of others. But when it comes to lifting themselves up and promoting themselves, not so much.
Right.
So whether you're writing a bio or in a job interview, those skills, if they're rusty, can really sort of set you off track.
Okay.
One of the tools outside of working with a practitioner that we really like is a brag book.
And you brought one along with you
I
here,
brought
right?
you.
Is this your brag book?
This is your brag book.
This is my brag book.
Actually.
Oh my goodness.
So a brag book, essentially, we've all heard the concept. Well, you know, we got it just for you. The concept essentially is, we've heard it at work, you know, keep that file with all of your wins and your stats so when you have your annual review, it's easy to grab, you don't forget things.
Right.
But we don't have an annual review for ourselves, really, for most people. So this is kind of a handy way to collect all of those moments that make you feel proud in one place. You can feel it, you can touch it, it's tangible. And on those days where your inner critic maybe gets a little bit overactive, it also gives you something to touch and feel and look at and go, you know what, it's just a bad day, it's not a bad life.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, you know, one of the issues too is, you know, when people start writing it down though, you know, I think there's this sort of humbleness and humility that comes and then you start questioning yourself, am I allowed to do this? Like, how do you get rid of that sort of negative conversation that we often have with ourselves?
This is kind of the way. So instead of, you know, having to stand on a stage or go on TV and talk about why you're so great, you need to get comfortable being able to do it at home by yourself without an audience. In this book, you might put things, you want both sides. You want external and internal.
Okay.
So I brought some little items. So you might have external things like a card with some nice words from somebody that loves you or pictures from an important day. But you want to have stuff that comes not just from other people, but from your internal system. So it can be literal. You can write yourself a thank you note. It can be a bullet point. It can be a moment of something really, really small that you're proud of, that you pushed through, that you want to celebrate. Or it can be something that isn't so literal and is kind of just meaningful to you. Like I have a card from my niece that you might just look at and see. It has a very cute narwhal in it.
Yeah.
But I'm really proud of the relationship we have. And so we do, when she's a sleepover, we do highs and lows. But I've added in, and what are you proud of yourself for today?
Right.
So I look at that and I feel proud of like that relationship and how hard we both work at it. So that's going in my brag book at home. And while you may not know what the brag is with that, my system does, and it helps me feel more comfortable. If you can't brag, if it feels like it's too far away, if your whole system is like, brag, it feels like you don't like it, start with gratitude. So when I first started doing this work, I hated it. I couldn't do it. It felt uncomfortable. So I did a gratitude book, and it was things that I was grateful to for me. What have I done for me that has made my life better? I called and made a doctor's appointment that I needed to make that will make my life easier. I, did a bunch of laundry so that my busy week next week is easier and I don't have to struggle. Don't feel like it has to be inaccessible and so big and so perfect and so beautiful. Like, write a bullet point, put down a song lyric, whatever makes you feel that sort of sensation of pride in your body and in your system means you'll also recognize it when you go out in the wild and you experience it, and you can enjoy it a little bit more.
Do you think women do a good job of lifting up other women? I know we're talking a lot about personal here, but when it comes to, women supporting other women, do they do a good enough job in your mind?
Women are so good at lifting other women up. It's their thing. They're so good at it. But when it comes time to do it for themselves, it's just not something we're comfortable with. We look at, I think most people would think that it's a self-esteem thing. But really, when you look at it, the self-promotion gender gap exists even when women can tangibly prove that they have outperformed their peers. So when you take, we're painting with broad strokes here. Every human is different. But when you take away that self-esteem piece, what's left? And we look at socialization. So little girls, there's so much pressure to sort of embody that good girl role and acquiesce. And the worst thing you could do is be aggressive or be full of yourself. There's no wonder we have a cohort of women who can't go out and celebrate themselves, but can do it for others. So unlearning that is a really mindful, intentional process. And it starts with things like this. It starts with celebrating yourself and getting comfortable saying, I did a thing and I'm really proud and it feels really good.
Yeah, I know it is hard for people to do it, but I think it makes a huge difference in people's life. 10 seconds, how do people get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
Follow us on social, Copper Thread, find our website, www.copperthreadcoaching.com. Shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Steph. Really appreciate you joining me. We'll be right back after this.
Hi, my name is Kelly Lee Evans, and I am so excited to be performing for Encore Ottawa 3. Into the deep unknown. My performance will be coming out this week, so stay tuned.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
Hello, I'm Liz Dowdswell, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. In 2008, carbon monoxide, a deadly invisible gas, killed an entire family in our province. That tragedy led to a new law requiring homes with potential CO sources to have alarms. John Gignac's family members passed away that day, and he shares his story to save others.
Please make sure you have working CO alarms in your home. Protect your family today.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary. Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
Welcome back to the show, special edition, as we celebrate International Women's Day. And off the top, I mentioned this, but I'll just remind everyone that Mayor Mark Sutcliffe, just a few moments before we came to air, proclaimed the month of March 2023 here in the city of Ottawa, Woman, Life and Freedom Month, which is a great segue to introduce you to my next guest, because she is a full professor of ethics, human rights and mathematics education with Woman, Life, Freedom Organization. Welcome, Yasmin. Great to have you here. Really appreciate it. So let's talk about the organization. First of all, tell us a little bit about the history behind the organization.
Well, the organization is very recent. It started, I think, November 2022, following the uprising of Iranian people due to the death of Mahsa Amini. So the history is the rally. So it's not a very old organization, quite young actually. Yes.
Yeah, and we've heard the stories of the alleged poisoning, right? Of I think it's about 1,000 Iranian schoolgirls. Yes. When you hear something like that, what goes through your mind? I mean, it just doesn't seem possible in 2023 that this is happening.
That is right. Well, it is frustrating. It is hurtful. But it's the most recent phenomena of what have been the practices for 40 years. So the current government of Iran is not very, very unfamiliar to these kind of practices. They have been doing this for such a long time. It's just now that it's open out in the public. It is unfortunate, and I think, it's I have to go back a little because it is now a recent event of a following 5-6 months of rally and uprising, and a sort of a woman life revolution that started in Iran, as I said, in fall of 2022. When a girl, 22-year-old girl, wasn't properly hijabbed based on the view of the morality police, and it was killed in the custody. So that led to women uprising, girls saying we're not going to wear hijab anymore, and then men being allies and support of women for months and months, but then always faced by guns, basically.
Yeah.
Violence.
You mentioned this is a long history of oppression. Yes. For those that aren't familiar with what's been happening with this particular government over 40 years here, we're seeing some of it now, and it's getting media attention. But what about some of those things that haven't been getting media attention over the last 40 years?
Well, unfortunate, but we are happy that now we're getting the media attention, because that would lead to more of an international communities such as UNESCO, World Health Organization, definitely for the poisoning. I think I was reading a clip that similar poisoning happened in Taliban's time in Afghanistan because of segregating women from, especially schoolgirls, from going to schools and fearing the parents. I think we have a saying in Iran that says, whenever you get the fish from the river, it's fresh. And it corresponds to this, that when is awareness, then responsibilities would follow, then people would not stay silenced and it would go on. And that's our hope.
Yeah, and the responsibility of men being allies in this fight, that is something I don't think we've seen a lot of over the last 40 years, perhaps because the repercussions of that. Absolutely. So certainly encouraging to see, finally, and mostly from just observing from the outside, it's been young men that have stepped up as being allies. Do you see any change? Are you encouraged that any change will come from this at all?
I do see changes in the fact that young Iranian, like young people that I teach, they are more fearless. Yeah. They are courageous, much more than I think I was when they were their age. And when they say, I don't get this, I don't accept this anymore, I think then they stand by it. So I do see that as a very positive thing in Iran and in other places. Also the role of social media the way it connects the youth in Iran and us with them, despite of all the internet sanctions and cuts and things that are going on in Iran. All the time they find ways to communicate with each other and outside world. And I see that as positive, although there are layers and layers of politics.
Of course.
Of world politics.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, but that brings me to my next question. What is the responsibility of the rest of the world, and what do you think the responsibility is of Canada's involvement in what we see happening? Because I don't see the government has done, much other than, the symbolic, saying that, this is a horrible, tragic, horrific situation. What more should the rest of the world, and Canada in particular, be doing?
Well, I think one of the things that Women Life Freedom Organization asked from the beginning is to put the Islamic morality police of Iran in a list of terrorists, so they would be treated as terrorists. That's an important step. And also International Court of Justice to be involved and UNESCO to be involved.
Right.
Those kind of United Nations organizations to give it a legal status that this is a crime against humanity, and go from that point.
Yeah, and there is a rally coming up, right,
Yes.
on Saturday against this mass poisoning, alleged. I mean, people are still saying that, but I think from everything that all the information that we've gathered, that we can pretty much say that this is happening. How can people get involved in the rally coming up Saturday?
There would be flyers. There is a website, woman.life.freedom/Ottawa.
Okay.
So all the information would be there, a little bit about the history, events that are coming up, and especially about the poisoning.
Yeah.
That yes, there would be a rally.
Yasmin, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so
very
much.
much. Again, that rally is happening on Saturday, March the 11th. As Yasmin said, you can find out more information online. We'll be back with more Daytime Ottawa right after this. Don't go anywhere.
After a night out with your friends, there's always options for getting home safely. You could call your BFF, your mom or dad, whoever you can count on for a safe ride home. You could call your favorite cab company or 1-888 taxi guy. Or you could use the Arrive Alive smartphone app to help you choose your ride. Be it a friend, transit, or taxi, getting home safely is app easy. Now available for iOS and Android devices. Visit arrivealive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Leonard Thompson, 13 years old, diabetes mellitus, 65 pounds.
Starve the child to let them live? The treatment's as cruel as the disease. It's a death sentence.
Dr. Banting, this could be it. He's the first to receive this trial. But will it save him?
It's not pure enough. So we try again. And again. And again.
Before the discovery of insulin, diabetes was a death sentence. Banting, Best, Collip, and McLeod's breakthrough has saved millions of lives. Leonard Thompson's was the first.
On the next episode of Simply Cooking by Chef, as Canadians, we love our chips. Join us as we put an Italian twist on a crowd favorite, burgers and fries.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Daytime Ottawa. My next guest is a fantastic career coach and the author of this amazing book. And I'm going to read you the title because I just love it. It's called Sex, Self-Esteem, and Sheer Stupidity, Surviving Your 20s and Beyond. I am joined by Tanya Pomerantz. She is the author and, as I said, career coach with Puddle Jump Coaching. Welcome back. Great to have you here. We had such a great conversation the last time we were here, and I wanted to start off talking about, because I know you went through this, and you're very open and honest in your book about comparing ourselves to others, and you found yourself doing this, and I guess realized, Tanya, the dangers of doing that. Tell me a little bit about, why you were doing that, and what were some of those dangers of comparing yourself to others?
Yes. So I just actually was in the green room, and I was reading a little part about that, and I just felt so badly for that person because it's this sense of not being good enough, and it's a very emotional thing.
Yeah, I know.
It took me 30 years in writing that book, as you know, and as I was writing it, I would or reading it, I would feel so sad for me and for every other person who feels this way, that they're not good enough.
Yeah.
And let me just say, I'm so glad that I grew up not in the social media world.
Yeah, me
because
too.
Wouldn't that be terrible? It is very dangerous, that sense of not being good enough, that sense of just not measuring up.
Do you think that happens to women more than men, Tanya?
I think it does.
I do too. Yeah.
I think it does, because just like the women in this program, for instance, Ariel, what are you wearing as a city councillor? The type of hatred that women are subjected to. What Hillary was wearing, pantsuits all the time, like everything, the makeup, the hair, that's the superficial stuff. So
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
What do you, when you think back, what do you wish you knew back in your 20s that I just love the reaction. Oh, Derick, God, don't ask me this. What do you think, you wish you knew back then that you know now?
So much.
Yeah.
So much. I did bring a cheat sheet because I never remember all of them, but there are only 4 of them. And the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Okay.
Never make assumptions. Be impeccable with your word. Always do your best. And the big one, don't take things personally.
You did a lot of that, didn't you?
All the time. My mother would always tell me, don't take things personally. It's not about you. Then when I was taking my coaching program, I learned about this, and I learned what it really means is there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that I don't know about.
Right.
Like, for instance, in an employment world, if somebody applies for a job and they're waiting to hear back from the HR people, you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. And it's the same thing. If we came in today and you didn't sleep well, or you weren't feeling yourself, and then I came in and we're having this, and you weren't the same lovely way that you always are, I'd be like, oh no, what have I done? Well, it's not about me. It's about the fact that you didn't sleep well or whatever. So don't take things personally. That is a huge, big one for me.
It's a great perspective to have. The theme for International Women's Day is embracing equity. I know that you've sort of discussed this before, but equity and equality, what's the difference between those two in your mind?
I'll tell you. And I was watching Real Time with Bill Maher, and he was asking Bernie Sanders about this.
Okay.
The two of them didn't know. So I'm going to explain.
Okay.
So I watched this. So picture this. There's a baseball game going on, and there's a big fence out, around the place.
Yeah.
And there's 3 people. They've all had this opportunity. It's an equal opportunity for them to watch this game. One guy is really tall, and he's able to look over the fence, no problem. One girl is shorter, and so she can't see. And then a third person is using a wheelchair. Okay, so tall guy is there. Then there's the girl, so she gets a box that she can stand on.
Right.
Now she can see.
Right.
But what about the person in the wheelchair? They need to have not just a box, but like a ramp so that they can go up there. And now they can be on that same level. And now everyone can look out and see the same thing. Everyone's on a level playing field.
Right. I think you've called this, part of your life, Tanya, is sort of your second act, right?
Yes.
You seem to be in such a better place in this second act. How have you managed to get to this place?
I love that question. And because of purpose.
Yeah.
Because I found my place in the world and I understand what I need to be doing, and because of gratitude. And I am, as I say, I live in a perpetual state of gratitude. I'm grateful for everything I have, and for the people in my world, and for what I get to do, and for who I get to do it with. I'm grateful for the smallest things, like getting a pull-through parking spot. Just everything.
I love that.
So it really is. It's all about gratitude and really finding my purpose and my place in the world, and understanding that life is short and this is just a gift that we're given.
Well, I'm so glad. I know that you had some of the such dark times, Tanya, and to see you come through it like this is it's really encouraging, because sharing a personal story is very difficult, and that you put it down on paper is pretty special, right?
I know your story too, mister.
Well, thank you. Where can people get a copy of this great book?
Amazon, and then Singing Pebble, Books on Beechwood, Spaniel's Tale in Hindenburg, and Chapters. I know they're having their little cyber thing.
Okay.
But South Keys and then Pinecrest.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Hi, I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3. I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
We can be hurt. We can be bruised. We can be broken. Slowed down, confused, and even numbed. But we can't be defeated. We're built on a foundation that's strong, our mission unwavering, and together we'll beat as one.
Your City News forecast for today could be a windfall of cash. With our weather guarantee, if we're off by 3 degrees, you could win. Enter at ottawa.citynews.ca. And if you hear your name on Wake Up with Rob Snow at 7:21 a.m., call in to claim your cash.
This is Meg from Fit Over 50. On our next episode, we're going to be doing a full body workout using resistance bands. You can find bands at any local sporting goods store. So go get yours and hope to see you then.
Welcome back to Daytime Ottawa. We are so fortunate to have an institution like the Royal Ottawa Mental Health Centre here in our city. And as you know, this is our special edition around International Women's Day. So we wanted to talk a little bit about mental health and mental health issues that are specific to women. I am joined by Beth Robinson. She is an EDI specialist over at the Royal. Beth, thanks so much for doing this. We really appreciate it.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Stan.
Can you hear me okay, Beth?
I can hear you good
Okay,
now.
there we go.
Right,
Beth, so let's talk about mental health challenges faced by women. Are there certain challenges that are specific to women that you can speak upon, Beth?
Yeah, so there's, general statistics would show that women are actually at higher rates of mental health just challenges like anxiety, depression, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder. And then there are other more specific factors that may impact women-identified people, including postpartum, violence against women, which only, again, enhances, depending on what kind of woman you actually are, whether you are Indigenous or Black. These are all kind of different factors that can affect your impact of discrimination on your mental health, and how you're able to kind of access the world and access services.
Beth, some of our guests today have talked a little bit about those societal pressures on women and that they face. Can you just expand upon that and describe some? Because I'm sure it's changed, right, over the last few decades what those societal pressures are. I mean, some, of course, have been happening for years and years, but there's probably new pressures out there. Can you touch on some of those?
Yes, absolutely. So unfortunately, the burden of care, of domestic, care and, helping of extended family members is still statistically rests largely on women. These were statistics that came out of the COVID pandemic in particular, that indicated that there was added pressure on women to not only do their jobs, but also to educate their children or supplement education that may be intermittent due to lockdowns, but also, maintaining their jobs and trying to kind of keep everything running. There is an added pressure on women to kind of fulfill these multiple duties. The idea of you can have it all, kind of, it's right. That's great, but it also takes a lot of work to have it all. And that can also be a major strain of anxiety and a major cause of anxiety and depression.
Beth, is there a sense of some discrimination around women's mental health?
There, because, and you can look at this historically, but women have been more often, positioned or, as in being more kind of susceptible to mental health challenges because they are somehow weaker, or they don't have the same sense of resilience, which is totally not within reality, not factual. However, many mental health services are not as specialized to women's mental health in particular. Whether that's even thinking of how different medications affect different women, as well as different types of supports that might be beneficial for more women-identified people than otherwise. So there is definitely that lack of resourcing for women and mental health.
Beth, has the Royal itself been increasing, sort of able to increase its ability to help women specifically in the mental health field?
Absolutely. I'm very, very glad you asked that. So the Royal has started the Women's Mental Health Program, and this was actually created out of a need to address these unique ways that women experience the world's mental health, as well as treatment and recovery. There's a Women's Resource Center as well, the Shirley E. Greenberg Resource Center for Women, that is specialized again to provide support and more kind of raising capacity for the Royal community to better serve women-identified people. So that is definitely on the radar. We are also having an event on Thursday with the foundation to kind of again enhance our awareness of women's mental health in particular and gain more support by our community partners.
We've seen an increase as well, Beth, in homelessness and substance use, and oftentimes, that self-medication is because of a mental health issue, or that substance use, becomes a mental health issue. Within the Royal, are you seeing more instances of that?
I am. I would say, again, statistically, women are more likely to finish concurrent disorders, which is a fancy way of saying that they have multiple things going on. We do have a special program called our special kind of unit called Substance Use and Concurrent Disorders. Okay. I would encourage you to take a look and see, delve more deeply into what the work of that unit is particularly doing. But yes, there's more women that I know, and in terms of some of our frontline clinics, like Prompt Care Clinic, for instance, that women are more often to use services like that, who are struggling with substance use. And again, there is stigma around, not only women's mental health, but also substance use in particular, and what that means for women as opposed to men. So as an example, alcohol use. So that whereas it is for a number of different cultural and social reasons more normalized with men to drink heavily than it is for women.
Beth, I really appreciate your time today. Just running out of time here. I hate to cut you off, but we'll be right back after this.
Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by storytellers for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
Hi, my name is Kelly Lee Evans, and I am so excited to be performing for Encore Ottawa 3. My performance will be coming out this week, so stay tuned.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
Welcome back to Daytime Ottawa. I apologize. I'm just having a look at my phone here because I wanted to sort of give you an update on the rally that is coming up on Saturday. That's Saturday, March the 11th. They're asking everyone here in Ottawa to join the global rallies to condemn mass poisoning of schoolgirls in Iran. It's alleged since November, approximately 1,000 schoolgirls have been poisoned in Iran. It's called Until Our Last Breath. Woman, Life, and Freedom. And there's going to be members of Parliament. The Iranian Canadian community is going to be there. The political community, human rights activists are going to be there, all invited to attend. There's going to be a lot of speakers that are involved there as well. So again, that's happening on March the 11th. That's at the Canadian Tribute to Human Rights, which is located at 220 Elgin Street. So if you want to show your support, there's obviously human rights travesties happening in Iran at the moment. So get out there. I believe that begins at noon on March the 11th. You can find out, of course, more information. I want to thank all of our guests today. What a fantastic show, and wish everybody, all the women in your lives, a happy International Women's Day. Thanks for watching.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your